Good day, everyone. My name is Cheryl B. Bautista. I am a second year MAD student, major in educational management, and minor in language teaching English. I am going to present a formalist analysis of Edgar Allan Poe's short story entitled The Cask of Amontillado. The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. The Cask of Amontillado is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe published in 1846. It is a tale of revenge and murder, told from the first-person perspective of the narrator who lures his victim into the catacombs of his home and buries him alive. Let me first give you a summary of the short story. The protagonist, named Montresor, is out to punish his friend Fortunato for insulting him. He lures his victim, Fortunato, into the catacombs under the pretense of tasting a rare wine called Amontillado. Blinded by the pride he has for his expert judgment in wine, he goes along, determined to show his better judgment than his friend Lucchesi. Getting drunk put the situation even more to Montresor's advantage, and Fortunato was unaware of what was happening. Fortunato was chained to the wall, and Montresor sealed him into a room, building a wall brick by brick with a trowel he had shown him earlier. After thinking it was all a joke, Montresor no longer hears anything from Fortunato on the other side of the wall. With one more stone in place, he throws the torch in. Fortunato was left down in the catacombs undisturbed by no human for half a century. For this formalistic analysis, I am going to concentrate on three formal elements. These are the structure, the language, and the symbolism. Let us have first the structure. The story, The Cask of Amontillado, is divided into two parts. The first is the narrator's plan to get revenge on Fortunato, and the second is the execution of that plan. This is an excerpt from the story The Cask of Amontillado. This is actually the very first part of the story. Let me read this to you. The thousand injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best as I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length, I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled. But the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. As observed, the story is told on the first-person point of view by the narrator, who is also the main protagonist. So the narrator here uses the first-person pronoun I. The use of a first-person perspective adds to the suspense and intrigue of the story, as the reader is privy to the narrator's thoughts and intentions. We, as readers of the story, we have access to what the narrator is thinking and what are his intentions, because he uses the first person perspective. The story also employs a straightforward chronological structure, moving from the initial planning of the revenge to its ultimate execution. In the story, there were no flashbacks. So, Edgar Allan Poe used fabula, or the chronological sequence of events in a narrative. The setting of the story, which takes place at a catacomb, adds to the eerie atmosphere of the story, and the use of repetition, such as the narrator's references to the Cask of Amontillado, reinforces the theme of obsession and determination. The second formal element is the language. The setting of the story, which is the catacombs below the house of Montresor, was vividly described in the story. Poe's use of vivid descriptions, such as the recesses of the catacombs and the damp grounds of the catacombs, creates a powerful atmosphere of death and decay. The narrator's tone in the story is also an important aspect of the language analysis. The narrator is confident, manipulative, and cunning, and his use of language reflects this. He was very cunning, he was very clever to lure Fortunato into the catacombs of his home by using Fortunato's pride, because Fortunato prided himself as somebody who is very good in distinguishing wine. So the narrator used this, the cask of Amontillado, to lure Fortunato into the catacombs of his home. Again, here are excerpts from the story. Let me read this. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" he said. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of the carnival." "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "My friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucchesi." "I have no engagement. Come." "My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre." "Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado." Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm. Putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. In the excerpt, Montresor repeatedly used the word "you" when addressing Fortunato. This creates a sense of intimacy and trust, even as he is plotting the victim's death. He even addresses Fortunato as "my friend." The use of repetition and irony also contribute to the language of the story. The repetition of certain words and phrases, such as "Amontillado" and "you will be pleased," adds to the sense of tension and unease in the story. The irony of the narrator's statements, such as when he says, I was never kinder to the victim than during the whole week before I killed him. This highlights the deception and manipulation at the heart of the story. Poe's use of vivid and concrete description, his choice of words and phrasing, and his manipulation of tone and repetition all contribute to the unease and horror of the story. The third formal element is symbolism. The most significant symbol in the story is the cask of Amontillado itself, which represents the ultimate fate of the victim. The cask is used to lure or entice Fortunato into the wine cellar where he is eventually buried alive behind the walls of bricks. The cask symbolizes the entrampment and death that awaits the victim, as well as the narrator's triumph over him. The narrator's mask is another important symbol in the story. When they were going to the wine cellar, the narrator wore a black silk mask. So this mask represents the narrator's hidden motivation and deception he employs to carry out his plan. By wearing a mask, the narrator is able to disguise himself and mislead his victim. The Cask of Amontillado, the narrator's mask, the catacomb, the wine cellar all serve as symbols that contribute to the overall meaning and atmosphere of the story, emphasizing the themes of death, entrapment, and deception. In conclusion, the formalist analysis of the Cask of Amontillado highlights the formal elements of the story, such as its structure, language, and symbolism, and how they contribute to the overall meaning and effect of the story. Thank you so much for viewing. I hope you enjoyed and learned something.